Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man, at your services. How are you all? Hope you're doing very, very well. We're now into the second half of October. Autumn to some, Halloween to you and me. And it's amazingly warm. All the back doors are wide open. The wind of yesterday, the rustling leaves, the falling orange, amber and brown scattering across the sky, and the leaves, tumbling in through the back door. Wonderful, very atmospheric. And that kind of not too cold, but not warm breeze blowing through the trees at the cemetery over yonder. And today, it's like being back in June. It's roasting hot. The seasons, they're all to hell. Of course they are. Folks, I reviewed Jim Cummings' pseudo-werewolf fable, indie horror comedy, The Wolf of Snow Hollow, and I like it. I like the film a lot. It's got lots of errors. It's got lots of stuff which won't appeal to many people, but something I only gave kind of a short thrift to in that review, and something I really should have spent a lot more time on, I'm going to rectify now by giving a bit more airtime to the wonderful, totally evocative score from Ben Lovett. This is Ben Lovett from North Carolina, film composer, not Ben Lovett from Mumford and Sons. Not that one, not that guy. And even though this was like a low-budget independent movie, he strove to try to create a very Bernard Herrmann-esque sort of score, a very rich, ambient, dark and macabre and moving sort of score on a budget. So they moved into his native North Carolina in what was an old church, and he got a very sort of small ensemble. I think it was, 8-string, 5-horn players, 1 bassoon, 1 clarinet. And yet he does evoke a sort of very rich, magisterial sense of growing menace, melancholy, foreboding, and a great quirky sense of humour as well, which Jim Cummings, as I discussed, was the writer, director and main star of the movie. And it's very much a one-man show when it comes to the film itself. But the errors are that Jim Cummings, as much as I love what he's done, it's his vision. He tries to keep it his vision, but his vision is so all over the place that the film is tonally like that, and it can't keep hold of one particular strand without collapsing into another strand and then tumbling arse over tit into another realm of almost farcical comedy of errors. But Ben Lovett's score, he does have a voice, as he says that in all the scores he's done previously, and he worked with Jim Cummings before on Thunder Road. Each of his scores is different. You won't see a singular sort of voice, a recognisable trait throughout all of his scores, but each film, each project develops its own voice. And this one, he's looking at what the film is doing, and he's creating a sense of menace and macabre, but also with a bit of slow brooding, atmospherics, building this sense of dread, as you can hear right now. And it's wonderful stuff, but it does have some very quirky elements too, which I'll come on to. There is a great cover version of the 1966 Little Red Riding Hood, which is kind of like a goth rock, garage sort of, jazzy pop, loungy type thing, done by Valentine, who is Valentine, female singer. I won't play that because there may be problems with that one. But being as I played the score the other night behind my review of the movie, I think we're okay with the actual score itself. So, well, that actually is the beginning of Little Red Riding Hood. But I want to come on to some of the darker yet quirkier elements. 1 bassoon, 1 clarinet. My favourite instrument in the orchestra is the clarinet. My daughter played clarinet until my own werewolf, yes, Roxy the husky dog, began to compete with her. Whenever she was practicing and training, she would howl and howl, which I thought was fantastic, but of course it was very off-putting to my daughter, who was trying to learn notes and harmony and theme and chords and whatever, You can tell I don't play an instrument. Well, not one that I can talk about anyway. But so it put her off completely. So her musical career went. However, the dog's career on stage has gone meteoric. But yeah, I want you to listen to a couple of bits, because after me reviewing the movie, and I spent all day yesterday working from home, just there, with ye oldie trusty laptop, and I had the score playing just on repeat, just constantly all day long, and several tracks really managed to, imbue a great sort of sense of unease, a frisson of foreboding, but also a great sort of how would you describe this? A playful nature, almost like we know you can't take this film seriously, and Ben Lovett, despite Jim Cummings' movie playing the horror scenes very, very, realistically and for maximum effect, and people are dying, so it's a serious thing. Plus the film's about the mental collapse of somebody, and how he reaches out very badly, not for help, but with a fist he reaches out. But listen to this. This is a third crime scene. It's sort of bouncy motif, squirrely strings, cello, clarinet. It's bouncing, it's quirky. There's Bernard Herrmann stabbing strings there, but it's done in a playful manner. We're not talking Norman Bates here. We're talking semi-farce. Woo! Little whippoorwills. It's ingenious. Using that church, Ben Lovett said that we could have done multi-track, we could have done lots of re-recordings and stuff, and piled stuff upon each other and mixed it all together. But he loved getting that live sort of aspect. There's the bassoon. It's energetic, and yet there's a sort of joie de vivre to it as well, despite macabre bodies being found in all states of disarray and dismemberment. This track, Utah, this is where it's set. What I'm saying is, this is an unusual horror film, very unusual. Not a complete success, but not a complete failure. A huge mixture of both, but the score seems to understand, look, this is unusual, and we're going to strike off, we're going to do the usual sort of beats, the menace, the fear, the suspense, but we're going to underpin it with a bit of playfulness, a bit of mischief, because really the film is kind of like when it comes to the horror aspects, characterizations which are just off the wall, So you've still got that bounce, that jollity, but there's more menace creeping in. And the strings chop in and all that. It's clever. It's one of those things where an ensemble get together, and even if you're not part of that ensemble, you're just observing it, you can't help but be drawn in to the magic that they're creating. They're bouncing off each other. That's what jamming sessions are like. Now, I'm not saying that this was like a jamming session. They knew what they had to do, but they're having fun with it, and they're developing off each other, off that energy. This is called Detectives, and I love this one. There's almost a bit of a Hellboy sort of thing going on as well. The Hellboy scores for Del Toro, especially the first one, which again deals with the supernatural and horror elements, but in an offbeat, left field sort of manner. Isn't that lovely? Again, that's the clarinet. The voice of the clarinet is so indelible, and it just permeates you. It can be bucolic, it can be morose. This is bucolic in this, and yet it's in a horror film. Yeah. Herrmann was the idea behind it, to try and evoke that sense of brooding darkness. And Herrmann would score a lot for the music for people's states of mind. Vertigo, for example, obviously Psycho. This methodic approach. It's meant to be like, the detectives, the cops, searching for clues, but they're completely cack-handed, haven't got a clue what they're doing. I love it. The strings are exquisite. It's keeping you on edge. Stuff. Let's go on to the opening track, which is just called The Werewolf. There is some sense of sadness and tragedy to the score as well, but it blends in well, whereas the film can tonally shift from horror and violence to all-out ridiculous pantomime. The score does the same, weaves between the comedy elements and the horror elements, but it keeps some borders. Nothing strays too far to the detriment of any other cue or musical voice that's bestowed upon the movie. We've got that sort of, the strings have that metallic, almost like a metal claw, a titanium claw dragged across an anvil. Metal claws. Could that be a clue? I love these sort of pulsing clouds as the chords get stronger and then recede. The strings are so magnificent at that, evoking the pulsation of like brooding storm clouds, say. I'm also slightly reminded of the score for the Arnold Schwarzenegger, often neglected zombie movie Maggie, about his daughter succumbing to zombieism. And there's a magnificent cue in that. Who did that? Was it Max Richter did that? Do you know what? I may have got the name wrong of the composer there. If so, I apologise. But there's a great cue where Arnie goes to his neighbour's house because they've become zombified, and he goes around their house, his neighbours, his former friends, and there's a real aching sense of tragedy and loss and heartbreak, and he knows what's coming because they had to deal with zombies in their own family, locked them in a room, and he sees photos of the family when they were alive and well, and it's genuinely, soul destroying. To see Arnie crumble as well. And there's elements of this music which remind me of that. Like this, for example. slow, melancholic. Scene setting. This is Welcome to Snow Hollow, this track now. There's a sense of space, distance. Big tracking shot that comes into Snow Hollow across the mountains to this little sprawled out hamlet, nestling in the middle of this huge whiteout and all the mountains around it. And this kind of gives you that impression of isolation. You're coming into a little enclave which is about to be terrorized. Second, folks. Well, I was hoping I'd have the soundtrack to Maggie there, the Arnold Schwarzenegger zombie one, to get the right name of the composer. It's not there. This element of propulsion, almost like a lurching sort of march, giving a sense of urgency and momentum. Folks, this was just, here's that little Red Riding Hood again. She has a marvellous voice, a bit of a grungy sort of voice, which I was playing this last night and Mrs. Kilt-Man was way in the other room, and she went, "Are you playing the Beatles there?" Well, it's coming on, so we may as well let it play. Come on, mate. The original song, Little Red Riding Hood, was a male vocalist, but switching it to a female voice lends it a different aspect altogether. That doesn't sound like the Beatles to you, does it? But drifting through the corridors, the halls of Kilt Mansion, it took on a very sort of John Lennon-y, post-hippie warble. See, this has a very ethereal quality to it as well, which again ties in. And with the slow strings as well. A slow grandeur. Sort of fragile power. Sometimes I have, an itch that I can't scratch, and I've got to go over things again and again and again before I feel totally exorcised. And Wolf of Snow Hollow, I knew there was an aspect I had neglected, and this score is wonderful. Available from Lakeshore Records, by the way. Slow, it's a dirge, but it's kind of sinuous. teeth you have. Big bad wolf. This time of year, he's out there prowling. To be honest, there's always a big bad wolf out there prowling. Sometimes closer to home than you might think. That does kind of epitomise the mood of the movie as well, and the whole tone that you should be left with. Despite Jim Cummings writing, Jim Cummings, you know, on the nose performance, erratic, you know, sort of directing style, the score remains a constant thing, coursing through this. So, folks, I have been, and always shall be, Kilt-Man. I just wanted to do this. I just wanted to give a bit more clout to this film, because I did serenade its arrival. You know, oh, a big werewolf film's coming out, and pretty much after making that video, I realised that this wasn't going to be the big werewolf film that many people probably hoped it would be. But it's still very well worthwhile, I think, but with many, many misgivings. However, the score is not one of those misgivings. It's wonderful, evocative, dark, brooding, slightly off-kilter, and amusing and playful. Brilliant. Folks, please be happy, be healthy, keep it kilted, keep it Celtic, and I'm going to see you all later. Even a man who is pure at heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright.